In every publication of the entertainment industry, the obituary pages are filled with stories of people who died of AIDS. Actors, dancers, musicians, set designers, opera directors, critics.
It's been devastating. In some areas, it's starting to look like a plague.
Frank Meyer is managing editor of Variety, the weekly Bible of show business.
Over the last 6, 7 months to a year, we've started to see 3 and 4 AIDS deaths a week on most weeks. And in addition to that, you could read between the lines on obituaries where it'll say, family doesn't want the cause of death revealed, died after a short illness, and you see that it's a young person in 20s or 30s, or even 40s. He's not married, and he has no children surviving him. He's survived by his parents and a brother and a sister. You start to draw conclusions, even if there's no cause of death.
In New York City, AIDS is now the leading cause of death of men aged 25 to 44. 2/3 of the victims have been homosexuals, a group many regard as the lifeblood of show business and the arts.
One of our major contributors to the arts are gay people. And the irony of it is that there are a lot of prejudice against gay people, and they have provided some of the most important aesthetics we have in all the creative fields of art.
The theater world is still reeling from the recent deaths of 2 of its most innovative figures. Michael Bennett, creator of Broadway's longest-running musical, A Chorus Line. And Charles Ludlam, an actor, writer, and director and founder of Off-Broadway's ridiculous theatrical company.
Rivals? I have no rivals.
I feel this country is suffering tremendous loss. Both those men, in the near future, would have turned out some extraordinary kind of works, unlike anything that we have seen before, because they were at the height of their artistic powers, both of them.
But playwright Harvey Fierstein believes even greater losses are occurring.
It's not just, all right, people like Charles Ludlam and Michael Bennett, they at least produced some work and they taught us some things, and if we want, we can study what they've left behind, and we have that heritage. I think of some of the kids that we'll never even know. We don't know who those kids would become, and we'll lose them. That's a loss that is so profound.
Try to imagine what it's like to lose some of your most promising, most inspirational energy sources at a time when they're just beginning to realize their potential.
Bill T. Jones is a modern dancer and choreographer. He met Arnie Zane at college in upstate New York in the early 1970s, and they've shared a professional and personal life ever since. For 8 years, they performed as a duet team, and in 1982, they formed their own dance company. The group suffered its first loss from AIDS earlier this year when a member of its board of directors, the fashion designer Willie Smith, died. But now, AIDS is striking closer to home. Recently, Arnie Zane learned he has AIDS.
I was incredibly frightened. I was in a panic. It was great desperation. Great desperation. When someone at age 38 discovers that they have a life-threatening disease, and one which is degenerating the body, one which is making you smaller, one which you are losing control over, one which you may not be victorious in. There's not room for that in the marketplace of the dance world as such.
As a consequence of AIDS, Zane has lymphoma, a cancer that has twice brought him near death. He's had 2 major operations and is on a regimen of chemotherapy, steroids, and intravenous megadoses of vitamin C. He's also tried acupuncture, a macrobiotic diet, and Chinese herbal therapy.
I have learned to live with not allowing, or to a lesser degree, the uncertainty bring me down. I try to be here now doing, keep active,
Despite all the physical setbacks, he has continued to choreograph and even to perform.
I developed shingles on my face and in 2 channels of my brain in December, and that was physically the most painful process I have ever lived with, was shingles. I had a major performance coming up at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. I had scabs on my face. My weight was down, and I was determined to perform. I had raised $150,000 for this project. This was my art. This was going to happen. I was fine for about 2 months. And then I had a tumor here on my belly and a bigger tumor on my back. Doctor said, well, it is possible if we can't control this with chemotherapy that you might have only 8 weeks longer to live. I was in the rehearsal studio dancing that afternoon. Said to one of my dancers, Amy, said, you won't believe it, what the doctor just said. We cried a little bit. We went back to the dance floor. We kept doing what we do. We had to finish a dance. We had a performance coming up.
Do you have a different perspective on life now?
I appreciate other people more. I have had to have my father, who I've had major differences of opinions with over the years, come here and help me from my bed after my first major dose of chemotherapy and help me get into a tub. And it was, wow, it was worth it, you know? It's unfortunate that it's illness, but what growth. I have love and support and resources around me. I consider myself a fortunate person.
At the center of Arnie Zane's support system is his partner, Bill T. Jones. The illness has taken an emotional toll on him as well. How did you feel when you first heard that Arnie had AIDS?
Frightened. I'm hearing myself think. It's been a while. Angry. Anger was a big one. Helpless. Extremely helpless.
How has your relationship changed since he's been ill?
I am much more appreciative. That's a small word. I am much more sensitive to who he is and how wonderful he is. I am also potentially overly protective of him and the relationship. And that can be a negative force at work at this time because we are still developing even inside this crisis.
Although Arnie's illness was an open secret in the dance world, Bill didn't want him to speak publicly about it. At first, he tried to discourage Arnie from granting this interview.
I'm more than aware of the stigma attached to this illness. We had one person who was working with the company someone said to him, how are you working with this group of dancers? There's so many gay people there. Don't you sweat on each other? You know, I sometimes think in certain areas of the country, people don't know as much about how the illness is transmitted. That they might have a reaction to that. They might be afraid. I was wondering if people would be less willing to invest in the company, or they wouldn't think we were going to survive. They might withdraw funding. All of those sort of reactions, if we came forward. The irony is that the news travels anyway.
The news should travel. My reaction, I had a bit of reticence initially, which I resolved within 10 minutes.
I think that sometimes AIDS doesn't have a face. It is a news anchor person talking about AIDS victims. I believe I'd like to give it a human face, and he wanted to do it very badly.
As growing numbers of their own have been stricken, many celebrities have rallied to the cause of raising money for AIDS research.
I feel that as an individual and as someone who can speak up, I have the obligation to do something about it.
I think at this point it's a worldwide cause, and anyone who is asked should say yes. Give whatever you can. If you can't give money, give your time.
It's hard to even explain the the sadness and the personal loss that everyone's had. I don't know anyone who doesn't know someone who has either died from this or is having a very difficult time because of this disease.
The worlds of theater, dance, music, fashion, interior design, and painting are all holding benefits like this gala to kick off the Art Against AIDS drive. 70 New York art galleries representing 600 artists have donated canvases, including some of the first works about AIDS.
I just love men with checks.
$600,000 was raised that night. The organization's goal is $6 million.
Art lives on forever. Unless we find a cure for AIDS, there will be no forever. And we will find it. We will find it together. Thank you.
But while celebrities are eager to raise money, they are surprisingly reticent about acknowledging illnesses within their own ranks. In June, Beverly Sills told the New York Times that 24 people associated with the New York City Opera had died of AIDS. She now refuses to discuss it. At this press conference to announce the Dancing for Life benefit, Mikhail Baryshnikov was asked how many members of the American Ballet Theater had AIDS.
I believe it's a matter of family privacy, and I won't answer this question.
Peter Martins, artistic director of the New York City Ballet, denied there was even a problem.
I'm not particularly aware of anybody being stricken in any of our companies.
Richard Goldstein, senior editor of The Village Voice, writes extensively on culture and the arts.
There's a certain tendency in a lot of the arts to be discreet. While within the arts, within the community, everyone is very open and accepting, to the outside world, another veneer is projected.
A discreet veneer, yes, but insiders say the reluctance to acknowledge AIDS is also due to fear. Fear of a backlash that would hurt ticket sales and funding. But individuals like Arnie Zane aren't afraid to speak out.
Do you think that the arts are particularly hit by AIDS?
That's the controversial question this month, right? Of course I do. I'm in the center of this world, the art world. My people, on a daily basis, I'm losing my colleagues.
How many people do you know who've had AIDS?
So, maybe 20.
I know dozens and dozens. It's horribly unfair. It's horribly unfair. But then life doesn't have to be fair. And it's changed this generation probably. We are a generation of people who know what loss is.
Fierstein's play, Safe Sex, which ran on Broadway this season, is the latest in a growing list of plays to deal with the subject of AIDS.
Let him go, Marion. He's mine. Dead or alive. Mine.
Let me help you live. What is so hot about living when you're covered with lesions and you're coming down with a new infection every day?
In the cable television version of the play As Is, Colleen Dewhurst portrayed a hospice worker.
I've had 35 people altogether that I've worked with. About 1/3 of them had AIDS.
Dewhurst is president of Actors Equity. She says that AIDS-related deaths are not more common among artists, only more visible.
The arts are supposed to represent the human condition, and strangely enough to be the forewarners on stage. If these deaths are able to make this country aware by allowing people to speak to it and to be out front about it, it will be the greatest service that we'll ever have done, any of us.
In an ironic sense, I think that AIDS is good for art. I think it will produce great works that will outlast and transcend the epidemic.
Richard Goldstein believes AIDS will have as profound an influence on art as either world war.
People think that the epidemic is going to make less sex in the movies. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There will be a mood that this epidemic produces, a melancholy, a cognizance of death, an awareness of the precariousness of life, a lack of confidence in the future, a lack of optimism about the future, and an anger, if not an ambivalence, about the social contract and where society falls in this picture.
The off-Broadway play Beirut depicts a grim future where those who test positive for AIDS are tattooed and placed in quarantine zones.
It's a lovely thing you're feeling for me, how you don't want to infect me and all, but stick it, okay? Because I got two choices. First, I could live without risk and feel dead. Or second, I could risk death and feel alive.
That's what Beirut is about. It's about this incredible insecurity that, you know, not knowing whether a kiss can lead to death. This connection between death and desire, this is a very old theme in the arts, which we haven't really experienced in our lifetime. And it's important that these things be articulated in art so that people can begin to organize their inchoate rage and their inchoate fear. And finally, their sadness, I think.
Arnie and Bill have choreographed a dance about their relationship.
It related to the illness in showing the strength of my being able to handle this person's body, my lover, my friend, my colleague, and vice versa. It is sort of an open letter to our friends and to the world saying, we're still working.
Do you ever consider the possibility that you might die?
Oh, yes. Of course. Of course I do.
What are your thoughts?
Living and dying is not the big issue. The big issue is what you're going to do with your time while you're here.
I think that even now there's a kind of a blinding pain that just cuts right down through my head and heart when I'm confronted with the reality that I could be losing this relationship. So we will hold each other, we'll build new works, we will deepen our relationship, we'll disagree, and we'll do what we do best, which is build and struggle.